My name was Amina. I was just 12. A girl tethered to the deep traditions of my village in northern Nigeria. Not just any girl, but the daughter of an imam, raised in a world where silence was the currency of respect and obedience was the only path. I wore the heavy veil of expectation, concealing the turmoil within me, a heart battling despair amidst the echoes of prayers that felt hollow. Every day, I awoke to the demands of my culture, yet each night, I gazed at the stars, dreaming of liberation, craving a love I couldn't name. In those fleeting moments of solitude, doubt crept in. Was there truly nothing beyond this life, steeped in obligation? A question formed, a shadow lurking beneath the weight of my family's expectations, one I scarcely dared to voice. Then, one night, everything changed. I was beckoned by a blinding light that engulfed me in visions beyond my imagination, a desolate desert and a radiant figure that took my breath away. Jesus. He called me by name, unveiling a profound reality I had been blind to for so long, a spiritual battle waging unseen, seeking my soul amid the chains of tradition. When I returned to my waking life, my heart was alive with truth, yet I was met with scorn. I was branded a heretic by those I had loved, thrown into the shadows where fear and isolation became my constant companions. The very community that once praised my deference turned against me, and I was left wondering if the light I had seen was worth the cost of my family's love. In darkness, however, light can find a way to pierce through. My quest for truth unfurled secretly, leading me to forbidden scriptures and whispered testimonies. I stumbled upon those who understood, a hidden community of believers who embraced me. Here, I found the peace that had eluded me, a fragile joy blossoming amidst the very real danger threatening to consume me. It's time to break the silence. Through the darkness of my pain, a purpose ignited. I came to realize that my experience was not just for me. It was a call to rise, to share my story and illuminate the path of those still bound in chains. I would no longer live in fear. My journey toward freedom was only beginning. Before we dive deeper into this powerful testimony, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it in your part of the world? Share in the comments below. And if you feel that stirring in your heart, that longing for truth, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. Because if you love Jesus, this is just the beginning of revelations that could transform your life forever. In the secluded village of northern Nigeria, I was raised in a world where silence and obedience were paramount. From an early age, the weight of tradition pressed down upon me, stifling any thoughts of resistance or rebellion. I was just 12 when my family decided to marry me off to a man twice my age. The fear of disapproval loomed large over me. The community breathed the same expectations that kept us all in line. In that world, the spirit of a person could easily be crushed beneath the society's crushing norms. I learned quickly that questioning anything could lead to severe repercussions, so I learned to stay silent, to obey. The years passed under the shadow of this forced marriage, and my internal struggle only intensified. I felt like a prisoner in my own life, a husk of the person I wanted to be. Each night I would lay awake, longing for freedom, for the chance to explore my own choices. But every day reminded me of the consequences that came with wanting more than what was prescribed. The spiritual war within me grew louder, a relentless tension between the fear of my reality and the hopes of a brighter future. It was during one of those sleepless nights that something extraordinary happened, a moment that would change everything. It started with a vision, clear and vivid, that pulled me from the darkness of my thoughts. I saw Jesus standing before me, wrapped in a luminous light that consumed the shadows around him. His presence was calming, yet powerful, and I felt an overwhelming sense of love wash over me. "You are meant for more than this," he said softly, and with those words, layers of deception began to unravel before my eyes. In that moment, I understood the hidden agendas at play, the manipulations of leaders who sought to control rather than uplift. I realized that I had been shaped by fear rather than by love and freedom. Jesus' words resonated deep within me, revealing truths about my life and the broader society I had lived in. I witnessed the pain of countless others, many like me, ensnared in webs of tradition that stifled their potential. The revelation was profound. The division sown by the elites to maintain power was a deception that we all needed to awaken from. I could see the distorted reflections of power dynamics, how they stifled our ability to dream and to aspire for greatness. What had once felt like an isolated torment was now intertwined with a global struggle, a spiritual war that called for awakening. As the vision faded, I was both terrified and inspired. I could feel the weight of my circumstances pressing down on me, yet there was also a newfound sense of determination. In that moment, I knew I had to share this awakening with others, despite the risk it might pose to my safety and harmony with my family. My heart raced with urgency, fueling my resolve to break the silence that bound us all. I understood that my journey toward truth was not just for my sake, but for every individual still trapped in a cycle of oppression. I was ready to face the consequences of my awakening, fueled by the desire to see others freed from the chains that had bound us for far too long. The battle for truth had only just begun, and I was committed to being a warrior in this fight. At just 12 years old, I was the daughter of the local imam, expected to embody obedience and humility. My life revolved around the community's rigid expectations, and I wore my traditional attire like armor, a blend of pride and suffocation that encapsulated my existence. I was respected, yes, but beneath the surface, I harbored an internal sadness, a longing for something beyond the confines of my prescribed destiny. Each day, I felt the weight of cultural obligations pressing down on me, leaving me trapped in a world where my hopes flickered like a fragile candle in the wind. My eyes often reflected a mix of hope and despair, yearning for freedom but tethered to the shadows of fear and expectation. When my family announced my impending marriage to a man I hardly knew, the world as I understood it began to crumble. The news hit me like a cold wave, chilling me to the bone. This wasn't just a personal tragedy. It felt like a betrayal of my very soul. The spiritual war within me erupted, fueled by fear of the future and the longing for the truth I could barely articulate. How could I become a wife at such a tender age, while the dreams of my childhood faded into the background? I felt my spirit resist, an insistent whisper urging me to seek more, to challenge the authority that dictated my worth and my path. But it wasn't until that fateful day when everything changed. I remember fleeing to a quiet corner of our home, seeking refuge from my escalating anxiety. That was when I found a dusty old Bible hidden away in a box. Curiosity pulled me in. Each page I turned felt like the unearthing of new possibilities. As I read about Jesus and his message of love and freedom, my heart surged with hope. For the first time, I was caressed by the warmth of revelation. This was more than just scripture. It was an awakening that challenged everything I had been taught. Suddenly, my world shifted again. I found myself standing in a vast, radiant landscape. It felt surreal, almost like a dream. And then, I saw him, Jesus, enveloped in a light so bright it wasn't blinding. It was inviting. He looked into my eyes and called me by my name. "Amina," he said, "you are meant for freedom, not bondage." In that moment, the layers of deception that had shrouded my life began to unravel. I was shown the hidden agendas at play, how societal norms had been twisted and manipulated by those in power, the elite, who thrived on division and control. The deeper truths about my past, my family, and the larger society crystallized before me. With each revelation, a sense of urgency flooded through me. I knew then that my journey wasn't just about avoiding the marriage that awaited me. It was a call to arms in the spiritual war that raged around us. I understood that there were countless others, just like me, who needed to awaken from the slumber of ignorance and fear. The dreams I had for a life filled with love, fulfillment, and purpose were not only mine to claim, but were part of a collective quest for truth and freedom. The experience filled me with both terror and exhilaration. I had been granted the gift of awakening, but what good was it if I kept it a secret? I felt a divine calling to break my silence and share this truth with the world, no matter the cost. During my prayers, I often found myself engulfed in a profound emptiness. I would repeat the words that were expected of me, but they felt hollow, echoing back in the silence of my heart. The rigidity of my upbringing weighed heavily on my soul, suffocating any flicker of hope or joy I once harbored. As the daughter of the local imam, I was conditioned to uphold our beliefs, yet inside, I wrestled with questions that haunted me. Was this all there was to life? A predetermined path filled with obligations and expectations? The suffocating grip of these thoughts drove me deeper into despair, leaving me longing for something I couldn't quite name. At night, when the world around me fell into a quiet lull, dreams took on a vivid life of their own. In these dreams, I soared through vast, open skies, free from the constraints that bound me in waking life. I dreamed of love and companionship, of choices made from the heart rather than dictated by fear. It was a stark contrast to the reality I faced each day, a reality steeped in cultural obligations that demanded my silence and compliance. I would wake up feeling heartbroken, longing for the freedom I had glimpsed in my dreams, yet pulled back into the confines of my existence by the weight of those expectations. The tension between my desires and my reality created a spiritual war within me, a battle I could no longer ignore. During those fleeting moments of clarity, I began to sense the hidden agenda that lay behind my family's beliefs and the larger societal structures that governed my life. I felt the influence of leaders and authorities who fostered a culture of obedience, manipulating the fears of our community to maintain control. The deception was profound, and it gnawed at my conscience, urging me to seek the truth buried beneath layers of tradition. As I continued to pray, yearning for guidance and understanding, I became increasingly aware of a deeper calling. I longed to confront the spiritual war raging around us, not just for myself, but for everyone trapped in the cycle of obedience and silence. In the quiet of those midnight hours, I asked for clarity, for a revelation that would illuminate my path and show me how to break free. Little did I know that the answers I sought would come in the most unexpected and profound way. Then, one night, everything changed. I found myself standing in a radiant light, surrounded by tranquility and love. It was there that I met Jesus, his presence emanating warmth that enveloped me completely. He looked at me with eyes full of compassion and said, "Amina, you are not meant for bondage. You are meant for freedom." In that moment, I understood everything. The truths I had long sought were revealed to me. The vital importance of awakening to love, the significance of choosing one's path, and the stark reality of the societal structure designed to control us. I felt a surge of determination to embrace this truth and share it with others who, like me, yearned to break free from their chains. The journey towards my awakening had begun, and I was ready to take my stand. One night, as I lay in bed, the weight of my thoughts pulling me deeper into despair, I slipped into a dream that would transform my life forever. The darkness around me faded, and suddenly, I found myself engulfed in a radiant light. It was blinding yet inviting, a glow that seemed to penetrate my very being. In that moment, I felt lifted from the constraints of my reality, liberated from the burdensome expectations that had shackled me since childhood. I stood there, trembling and awestruck, as the glorious figure of Jesus appeared before me, his presence radiating unconditional love and understanding. As he looked into my eyes, something shifted within me. I felt an overwhelming sense of peace that I had long yearned for but never experienced in the confines of my traditional life. "Amina," he said softly, "you are caught in a spiritual war." I could feel his words resonating in my soul, awakening a sense of urgency within me. He revealed the hidden agenda behind the teachings I had accepted without question, an agenda sculpted by the elite to suppress the truth and maintain their grip on the hearts of many. The realization hit me like a tidal wave, stripping away the layers of deception that had clouded my vision for so long. In a flood of images, I began to see the world as it truly was, the suffering and division sown through fear and ignorance. I witnessed countless souls trapped in cycles of despair, overwhelmed by dogmas that promised salvation, but in reality, held them captive. The stark contrast between my dreams of love and freedom and the life I was living became painfully clear. I had been taught to fear questioning the beliefs handed down to me, but here I stood in the presence of the truth, ready to shatter the chains binding me. Jesus continued to share revelations, each one pulling back the curtain on the manipulation that masked reality. I saw how the spiritual war was not just an internal struggle, but a battle fought in the hearts and minds of individuals everywhere. Each person, whether they realized it or not, was engaged in their own fight against the forces of deception. I felt the gravity of this mission, knowing the truth had to be shared. There was more at stake than just my own freedom. It was about awakening others to the reality of their circumstances. As the vision began to fade, I felt an urgency coursing through me, compelling me to act. I realized my journey had morphed into something far greater than I could have imagined. An awakening not just for myself, but a call to arms for those still ensnared in the darkness. I was ready to break the silence that had caused so much pain, to stand against the spiritual war that kept so many trapped in fear. The encounter with Jesus was not just a moment, it was an invitation to lead others towards the freedom I had just begun to embrace. My heart raced with the weight of the truth, and I felt emboldened to step forward into a world that demanded change. Upon waking from the most extraordinary experience of my life, I felt a mix of exhilaration and confusion. The dream had shifted my entire perspective. I had met Jesus, and the truths he revealed to me illuminated the darkness that had often surrounded my heart. However, as the reality of my situation sank in, I was faced with an undeniable truth. My family and community would not understand. I knew they would react with hostility and disbelief. Once I shared this experience, I felt an almost palpable fear looming, knowing I would be branded a heretic, an outsider in my own home. The moment I spoke of my encounter, the reaction was immediate and harsh. My father, the imam, who I had always looked up to, cast me a look of pure disdain. His voice thundered as he denounced my revelations, labeling me as a deluded child. My mother stood by him, her eyes wide with disbelief, morphing from worry to fear as she realized the implications of my words. In that moment, I felt utterly alone, the walls of my home closing in around me. The essence of my being had been awakened, but the people I had known my entire life turned their backs on me when I needed understanding the most. As the days passed, isolation became my constant companion. I moved through my routine, yet each smile exchanged with neighbors felt laced with suspicion. The guilt of feeling so different in a world that demanded conformity weighed heavily on my heart. I'd find myself replaying the visions of Jesus in my mind, his words echoing through the chaos of my emotional turmoil. I couldn't reconcile the notion of belonging to a community that sought to suppress the very truth that ignited my spirit, and the conflict felt almost unbearable. Each glance my way felt like a reminder of my perceived betrayal, pushing me deeper into despair. The spiritual war within me intensified. I often wrestled with guilt for abandoning the beliefs that had been instilled in me since childhood. My heart ached for acceptance, yet I could not silence the truth that Jesus had revealed to me. The more I embraced this new understanding, the more distant I felt from my past. I recognized the hidden agenda that shaped my upbringing, an agenda rooted in fear and control, woven by the elite to maintain their influence over our lives. It became painfully clear that my awakening was a beacon of hope, but it also came with the heavy burden of pushing against a tide of deception that I had once sworn allegiance to. Despite the emotional weight I carried, I felt a compelling need to reach out to others. I began speaking quietly to those around me, friends who seemed open to discussion, and even strangers, sharing the message of love I had experienced through Jesus. But with each conversation, I faced the risk of rejection. The fear that plagued me was relentless, yet, each time I shared my truth, I felt a little lighter, a little less isolated. I realized that this burden could no longer be mine alone. I was part of something greater, a community of souls yearning for awakening. As I continued to engage with those who were curious, I knew I was fighting not just for myself, but for the lives of many who remained entrapped by the very deception I had escaped. Each day became a battle, fueled by an urgency to spark awakening in others, even as I clung to the hope of reconciling with my family in the future. Determined to seek the truth, I found myself treading a dangerous path, one that often felt like a lonely journey filled with shadows. After that transformative vision of Jesus, the embers of curiosity ignited within me, urging me to explore the depths of Christianity, something I had only glimpsed through the lens of fear and misinformation. I began a covert investigation, sneaking away to find solace in the words of the Bible, often reading late into the night when my family believed I was asleep. Each verse I uncovered seemed to breathe life into my weary soul, granting me a sense of peace I had never felt before, yet could hardly comprehend. As I delved deeper, I discovered online testimonies from others who had once walked the same path I was on. They spoke of love, redemption, and the profound joy that comes from a relationship with Jesus. I was captivated by their stories. They were tales of hope that lit a fire in my heart. Yet the reality of my situation often weighed heavily on me. The risks of my investigation loomed large, each session filled with the pulse of anxiety and fear. Would my family ever understand my quest for truth, or would they see me as a traitor to our way of life? There was a constant internal battle, a spiritual war waged in the confines of my mind and heart. One evening, while scrolling through a forum, I stumbled upon a hidden group of Christians who were willing to offer a safe haven for people like me. With trepidation, I reached out to them, sharing my fears and hopes. To my astonishment, I was met with warmth and acceptance. They welcomed my questions, understanding the depth of my struggles and the sacrifices I feared to make. Their compassion enveloped me like a soft blanket, providing a sense of belonging that was absent in my home. Yet, every interaction reminded me of the risk I was taking. As I stood on the precipice of losing my family's love, acceptance, and the security I had always known. As I participated in their discussions, my awakening deepened. Together, we began to explore the hidden agendas exercised by the elite in our societies, how they manipulated narratives and fostered division among people to maintain control. The more we uncovered, the more I realized how the spiritual war extended far beyond my personal struggles. I bore witness to many around me who were ensnared in deception, unable to see the truth because they had been conditioned to accept the fear-laden ideology fed to them since childhood. Each revelation felt like a battle cry, compelling me to share what I had found with those still trapped in the fog of misunderstanding. With every meeting, I found myself more and more committed to this cause. The stories of my past became less of a burden and more of a testimony of God's grace. I knew I had to confront my fears and ultimately speak out about my experiences and the love I discovered in Jesus. It became clear that my journey was not just about discovering truth, but igniting and awakening in others. Each day was filled with uncertainty. But alongside that uncertainty simmered an unshakable conviction that with the truth, came the power to change lives and give hope to those who felt lost, just as I once did. The urgency of my mission grew, and I was prepared to take the next step, no matter the consequences. Realizing my spiritual encounter with Jesus was not just a personal revelation, but a call to a greater purpose, shifted everything for me. It became clear that my experience was meant to ignite a flame within me, pushing me to confront the injustices of my upbringing and the societal structures that perpetuated them. I felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility to share my truth, to speak out against the hidden agenda that sought to keep people like me shrouded in deception. Each day that passed, I felt the urgency deepening, awakening a fierce courage that I never knew resided within me. As I began to embrace my mission, I encountered numerous challenges along the way. My family's disapproval hung over me like a dark cloud, their contempt palpable whenever I dared to express my newfound beliefs. But their harsh words no longer held the same power they once had. Instead, they fueled my resolve. I understood that this spiritual war extended beyond my own struggles. It encompassed countless others, trapped in a cycle of fear and oppression resulting from the elite's manipulation. I was determined to be their voice, their advocate, and to stand firm in the fight for truth. That fight often placed me in situations where I had to choose between my convictions and the comfort of conformity. I attended secret meetings with a small group of fellow believers who shared their stories of awakening and how they, too, navigated the turbulent waters of family loyalty and faith. Each time we gathered, I felt bolstered by the truth we discussed, the revelations shared, and the sense of community we experienced. I recognized that our collective mission was urgent. We had to spread the message of love and liberation that Jesus represented. It was our duty to shine a light on the deception that wrapped itself around so many hearts and minds. But the deeper I ventured into this new reality, the more evident it became that I was not just fighting for myself. I was part of a larger movement, a wave of awakening that sought to dismantle the oppressive narratives fed to us from birth. My conversations grew bolder, my confidence stronger as I shared my testimony with anyone willing to listen. There was a palpable tension in the air, an electricity that sparked when people connected with the truth. It was exhilarating and overwhelming all at once. I knew that each person I reached could be a catalyst for change, just as I had been. This spiritual awakening ignited a fire within me, driving me to confront the hidden agendas that cloaked our society in darkness. I began to witness the profound connections between the deeply rooted traditions of my upbringing and the manipulation of power that kept many trapped. This realization was daunting, yet it filled me with a sense of purpose. I was not merely sharing my story. I was participating in a divine movement, a spiritual war that called for courage, truth, and unwavering faith. The battle was just beginning, and I was determined to stand tall, armed with the truth, ready to fight for freedom and awakening for all who were still lost in the shadows. In a symbolic act of liberation, I made the decision to leave my village behind. It felt as if I was shedding my old self, the confines of a life that had been dictated to me since childhood. Renouncing my Muslim name for a Christian one was profound, a clear declaration of my break from the past and my commitment to the truth I had uncovered. With every step away from my community, I embraced my new identity, knowing full well the risks involved. I felt a mixture of fear and hope as I embarked on this path of evangelism, intent on sharing the love and enlightenment I had discovered through Jesus. The journey was anything but easy. Leaving behind the familiar streets of my village meant facing the haunting memories of my upbringing, the forced marriage, the expectations, and the chains of obedience that had bound me. But as I delved deeper into my faith, I realized my transformation was just beginning. Each new encounter with others who sought the truth became a source of strength. I found kindred spirits who understood the complexities of my struggle. Together we discussed the nuances of faith, the nature of spiritual war, and the hidden agendas of the elite that often manipulate our beliefs. There was a collective awakening happening, and I wanted to be a part of it. As I shared my story, the responses were mixed. Some were moved by my testimony, others were skeptical. Many struggled to comprehend the radical changes I had undertaken, but those who sought their own truths listened intently. I spoke of the revelation that Jesus had given me, how it had shattered the illusions that had surrounded my life. I warned them of the deception that can hide behind traditional beliefs, how easily manipulation can occur when one does not question authority or the status quo. With each conversation, I felt more emboldened, fueled by the conviction that this call to awaken others was more important than the acceptance I had lost. While I was out there spreading the message, the longing to reconcile with my past remained a heavy burden on my heart. I cherished the hope that one day, my family might understand the joy and freedom that faith had brought into my life. I couldn't help but think about how my journey of awakening could also ripple back to them, enlightening their lives in return. But the fear of their rejection still loomed large. I pictured their faces, the disappointment and anger they would feel upon learning of my transformation. Yet I knew deep down that staying silent would only perpetuate the cycle of deception. The more I embraced my new life, the clearer it became that this was not just about personal redemption. It was a fight against a much larger, pervasive darkness. I started to see connections between my experience and the broader issues plaguing our society. Wars waged in the name of power, technological manipulation by those in leadership, and the insidious ways fear was used to keep people from pursuing the truth. The awakening that began in my heart was a call to recognize the injustices around us. It urged me to bring others into the light, to create a movement where love and truth replace fear and deception. The urgency of my mission intensified. The battle against the spiritual war was raging, and I was determined to play my part in it, no matter the cost. Now that you've journeyed through my story, I must ask you, have you ever felt the stirrings of something greater within you? Something that beckons you to awaken, to challenge the chains that bind your spirit? This world is filled with shadows of deception, crafted meticulously by unseen hands, seeking to keep us compliant and afraid. But there's a light breaking through. It's the calling of a deeper truth that breaks barriers and opens hearts. And you, yes, you, are a part of this profound awakening. When I stepped into the light of Jesus, I understood that my transformation wasn't just a personal victory. It was a call to arms in a spiritual war. I discovered that my suffering was not in vain, but a catalyst for change, not just for myself, but for everyone still ensnared in the webs of tradition and fear. The urgency is tangible. We are all tasked with illuminating the path for others, raising our voices against the systems designed to silence us. The echoes of my heart whisper that we must share our truths, each story a spark of hope, igniting potential in others. So now, I turn to you. Have you ever felt that yearning for truth course through your veins, compelling you to rise up? I want to hear your thoughts, your experiences, your awakenings. Share them in the comments below. Understanding each other is part of this journey, and your voice matters. Together, let's break the silence that has kept so many in despair. And as we embark on this collective journey of understanding and awakening, don't forget to subscribe to Truth from Beyond and turn on the notification bell. Your support is crucial. It ensures that you don't miss the revelations coming your way. There are more stories, more truths yet to be shared, and we need this community to amplify our message. In our next video, prepare to dive deeper into transformative experiences, hearing from others who have emerged victorious from their own spiritual battles. I'm Hamza, and I'm grateful for this moment we've shared. Remember, the truth has a way of finding those who are ready to receive it. Stay brave and stay curious. Until next time, carry the light within you.